Happy birthday, Detroit, and welcome to your Daily Detroit for July 24th, 2020. Detroit, friends, was founded on this date in 1701, and it has been quite the ride. I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Yep, Detroit is 75 years older than the US of A itself. And you know, Jer, it really has struck me this year. Normally on these Detroit birthday days, Twitter lights up with everybody, you know, tweeting 313 things and memes and so forth. And I haven't seen anything like that this year, which, seems to be like a good reflection of kind of how everybody's feeling right now, which is, this is far from celebratory times, I guess, right?
Oh, for sure. These are trying times.
Yeah. Anyway, for today's show, we are doing something a little bit different. We're going to run a 2-minute drill with each story. We'll do a setup, offer some quick thoughts, and then on to the next one as there's a lot to cover. A little bit like Pardon the Interruption, Jared, that sports ball talk show on ESPN.
You know, I've been known to watch the sports ball talk shows on occasion, Sven.
Yeah, I wonder if you got the idea there. Anyway, you will hear this sound. That's the sound of the Detroit People Mover chime, if you remember that quaint little monorail that runs around on elevated tracks around downtown, when it's time to wrap up and go on to the next topic. So let's just get right to it.
Absolutely. Right quick, don't forget to vote for us at podcastawards.com in the news and politics category for best podcast. It's a free way to do us a major solid, and I'll put a link into the show notes. Over the course of the week, we've been following the developments around President Trump possibly sending federal agents to Detroit. Well, turns out in the next 3 weeks, it looks like he is. As we reported yesterday, they won't necessarily be Department of Homeland Security personnel, but we have learned that it will be part of Operation Legend, part of President Trump's move to insert federal agents in liberal, Democrat-led cities under the cover of responding to violence. The Trump administration had already confirmed that it planned to send federal troops to Chicago and Albuquerque, but according to the daily summary of updates from the president, over the next 3 weeks, the Justice Department plans to expand the initiative to Cleveland, Milwaukee, and Detroit. Now, the real question is, what are city officials and the state of Michigan going to do around this, if anything, beyond issuing a strong statement?
That is a good question, Jared. You know, we posted a link to a story. I forget what city it is, but the prosecutor there said he was essentially ready to start handing out indictments to federal troops.
I believe it was Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yeah, for coming in against, that city's offers. I mean, there are no laws or constitutional provisions really like spelling this out. We are in uncharted territory here, if my memory serves here. I worry that this risks essentially putting gasoline on a very low-grade fire here in Detroit. And I mean low-grade fire. Things have been largely peaceful with the protests here since the very early days. And I mean, Mayor Duggan and James Craig, the Detroit police chief, have acknowledged as much, right? They have said, we do not need help here. Sending in these federal troops. And again, to recap, this has first rolled out in Portland, Oregon. These are heavily armed, camouflaged federal troops that have no markings, no name tags, no badging identifying what department they're from, who are essentially coming, snatching people off the streets, throwing them into unmarked vehicles and whisking them away to who knows where. Like, this is scary times, and I fear that it's going to really escalate things here in Detroit. Detroit City Councilman Gabe Leland is expected to plead guilty to federal misconduct charges and leave his office. That's according to M.L. Elric over at the Freep. Jared, this must mean that they finally got the goods on Mr. Leland. The charging document was changed on Wednesday to say that Leland allegedly, quote, accepted a campaign contribution of $7,500 in cash in violation of Michigan law. So if you remember, that was tied to the controversial collision shop owner by the name of Bob Carmack. Detroit's city charter says that an elected official who engages in official misconduct, corrupt conduct in office, or pleads to or is convicted of a felony while holding office must forfeit their office. The other charges would be dropped. These are federal charges. And the maximum charge, if he takes this deal in the state court, is half of what he would have been subjected to in the federal charges. So he would serve now a maximum of 5 years in prison. But Jerry, I think we all know that he won't get that.
No way. No way. This is a sad story, Sven, as his father, Burton Leland, was a very well-respected leader in the community. This is a guy who I think a lot of people wanted to do well. It's another story of like people get close to that temptation, that money, and they just can't seem to keep their paws off it. And I'll also mention here, so much of Detroit bribery is such small ball, $7,500, sausages, suit, just all that kind of stuff. And it just goes to show just like how broke this town is. If like $7,500 can get you over the top in this place.
Right. It was apparently agreed upon to be 15,000 altogether. But, also continuing a long line of corruption on the Detroit City Council that really needs to be rooted out and put to an end. Monica Conyers most recently, just bad. And I hope we can just move past this quickly. All right. This next segment we're going to call Oh, Warren. There are a couple developments up there in Macomb County's largest city that we wanted to talk about.
First off, Macomb County prosecutors, after weeks of waiting, have decided to change their mind and are charging that Amazon delivery driver who was pulled over for parking on the wrong side of the road a few weeks ago. The driver, 23-year-old Detroiter Jalen Bond, is charged with refusing to obey a lawful order or direction by a police officer and operating a motor vehicle without carrying a driver's license, says the Macomb Daily. Prosecutors cite new evidence, but have not shared it with the press. Sven, there was a ton of uproar when this happened. It really seems like Warren is reversing the course. And I'm just going to say here, this just feels shaky to me. Warren has such a long history of racial strife, along with a lot of Metro Detroit that has a lot of division. And Warren is dealing with a lot of internal division with a south of Warren that's quickly turning more and more African-American, and the north of Warren, north of 696, staying white, staying conservative. It's really a divided city at this point, and it's something that we need to watch. My own personal experience, too, as somebody as a driver with Detroit plates, I've been pulled over more than a couple times in Warren, and all of a sudden, mysteriously, they don't go ahead and check my anything else. They're like, oh, sir, there's no problem.
Yeah.
It's just too squeegee.
Yeah. And don't forget that the city's mayor, Jim Fouts, originally came out and put a statement out on Facebook saying that this was an outrageous thing that the police officers did in harassing this, black Amazon delivery driver, which is, and then he reversed course at the urging of the police commissioner, William Dwyer, who, our next development is that there was a shooting at a celebration in Warren. There were more than 100 people gathered, 4 people wounded in the shooting. Police Commissioner Dwyer, in a comment, according to the Free Press, said, quote, because there is no support from local officials such as mayors and governors, crime is out of control. They are not supporting their law enforcement people. And for those of us who have been in law enforcement, you are not going to see young people wanting to be public safety officers, end quote. He did also go on and say that, Warren's not really having that much of a problem. I think he's commenting more on national trends, but scratch beneath the surface and you're starting to see that, this aging suburb is kind of chafing under its changing demographics and the scenes that it's seeing play out across the country. Man, I don't know, Jared. It's, Warren is what, the third largest city in the state?
Yep, something like that. I think it's north of 100,000 people. I'll just note here that this is something that the president, I think, would say. Seems to be very in line.
Moving on, there's been a lot of controversy around schools and the coronavirus. It is clear that the Michigan legislature, with its power around funding schools, is intent on tying the hands of local officials. Passions are running high in the community as 20 protesters were arrested on Thursday when they tried to block Detroit school buses with their vehicles. Dr. Nikolai Vitti, the superintendent of the Detroit Public Schools Community District, had an illuminating Twitter thread, and one of the tweets we wanted to highlight, he said that the district's reopening plan always envisioned empowering parents to decide F2F, that's face-to-face or online. The model was designed to anticipate what the federal and state government would allow and fund. Michigan now plans to allow only face-to-face instruction. People simply do not follow the K-12 political process. So if you've only got the money to do online learning, that's frankly all you can do. But Jared, this is a fast evolving situation. I think we should point out that Dr. Vitti is getting out a little bit ahead of the news and from Lansing, but not one to remain kind of, he's outspoken. Let's put it that way.
For sure. But he's also dealing with summer school. So he's got some unique challenges that other districts don't have. There was a plan narrowly approved in the Michigan House. It was a big package. It was approved by Republicans. Democrats are not happy about this, with the idea to basically benefit cyber schools. Mm-hmm. And the idea being is that it would provide options for parents and students, but it would also maintain that if you're in fifth grade or less, you have to do in-person instruction. This is going to be something, I don't see the governor signing this, but it's interesting to see that this is going to be a back and forth situation with basically, no real end in sight.
All right, next up, Detroit-based TCF Bank says it's offering $1 billion, that's a B, $1 billion, in loans to minority and women-owned small businesses. The bank will also be offering separately a $10 million grant program for low to moderate income homebuyers. This program is seen as the first tangible results of the commitments that 9 Detroit corporate executives made in condemning racism and pledging to support efforts to address systemic racism in the community and in their companies in the wake of the death of George Floyd. Both of these TCF Bank programs are 5-year programs. They're fed by profits generated from processing loans through the Paycheck Protection Program. The small business loans will be up to $1 million each, and they're going to be available across TCF Bank's service area, focused especially in Detroit, Grand Rapids, the Twin Cities, and Minneapolis, where TCF was formerly located, Chicago, Cleveland, and other locations. The Home Grant Program, meanwhile, is called Heart and Home. It offers grants of up to $3,000 to people who earn less than 80% of the area's median income, or to those who purchase homes in low to medium income census tracts. It's meant to help with closing costs, and it does not need to be paid back. TCF's goal is to process 750 home loans this year, up from 300 in 2019. Jer, good on TCF Bank and its executive chairman, Gary Torgo here, for putting their money where their mouth is here, I guess.
It's important to actually make the investments and spend the money instead of just a press release, which a lot of folks do. I will say that they are currently building a new 21-story headquarters on Woodward in downtown Detroit with ground floor retail and space for other office tenants. It'd be good also if they did something with these types of businesses in that retail facility.
Yeah, great opportunity to do that. Model D reports that the city of Hamtramck has temporarily waived requirements that business owners need to get a permit in order to conduct sidewalk sales. That means that all retail stores, except for pawnbrokers, can display merchandise on the sidewalks in front of their stores without having to go to City Hall first. The gesture is meant to help business owners weather some of the economic challenges of COVID-19. The program runs through October 31st. Jared, this is apparently modeled after some of the things that cities like Traverse City and even Detroit have done in terms of, closing off streets even to vehicle traffic to give retailers and restaurant owners and stuff more room to have customers and obey social distancing laws. Although they point out that because of Hamtramck's density, it's the most dense city in the state of Michigan, closing off streets would be a little bit problematic in many cases.
I personally am really excited about this. Hamtramck's so walkable. It's so interesting with all the different folks that live there. The density is something you're just not going to find. As somebody who spent some time in New York and other cities, you're not going to find anything closer to that than you are in Hamtramck when you're talking about houses being near each other. And if you drive through the streets of Hamtramck, I want you to think about the idea that this is what all of Detroit used to look like, with duplexes and yards. And there's so much great food. I'm just excited to check this out. This is about a mile away from the house. And I look forward to supporting some local businesses, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely a good idea. You're seeing things like this happen around the country in response to the coronavirus. And I think what will be really interesting is, this program is supposed to go through October 31st, which is, going to be essentially the end of sort of outdoor sidewalk sale season anyway, just because of the weather. But it'll be really interesting, I think, to see how many of these things stick and become permanent because they turn out to, make a lot of sense and people like them.
All right, we're going to end with some food news here. First off, I want to set the table with that Yelp says nearly 800 businesses on the site have permanently closed since the pandemic. So it's important to go out and support folks. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to talk about these new things. Slide a pop-up, so Slider Burgers. That was going to be in the Avenue of Fashion right across from our friends at the Narrowway Cafe. Now it's going to be in West Village. There is a pop-up this Saturday. I'll put a link in the show notes. Friend of the pod, Brenna Hauk of Eater Detroit, has the details. We will be sure to include all of them. There's also an Indian and Filipino fusion spot opening up in Eastern Market above Detroit City Distillery. Obviously, the interior dining isn't something that's really going to kick off large to start with, but I'm excited about takeout. You know, I love good Indian food. I love having good options.
Me too.
A couple more things I want to quickly share. Go support your taco trucks. I visited a couple of taco trucks recently, and I am so excited about it. And it's among the most socially distanced things you can do. And you've got like a nice barrier there, and the food is so good, especially with those authentic trucks.
And it's about as COVID safe as you can get when it comes to dining out these days.
For sure. And to finish this off, I want to say a get better to Godwin Ihintugi. He's been on the show before. He's a friend of the show. He was recently in an accident, but Yum Village in New Center keeps rolling along.
That's his restaurant that he opened up last year, yeah.
Yep, and with their hot and spicy takes. He will return to work. It looks like he's going to make it all right, but his vehicle is totaled. We will put a link to his GoFundMe that was organized by a friend of his. And regardless, go eat some Yum Village. It's some tasty stuff.
Yeah, get better soon, Godwin. He's a good dude, and we're thinking about you, man.
All right, and we are done for today. I hope you enjoyed our little experiment to keep stories moving along and keep the clock running, Sven.
That was different. I definitely had to talk fast through a couple of those just to make sure that we had time to get everything in.
For sure. Tell us what you think about it. What could we refine? dailydetroit@gmail.com. Don't forget also, we are up for a podcast award at podcastawards.com in the news and politics category. And if you're feeling super generous, our Patreon is there for you at patreon.com/dailydetroit. I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Thanks so much for listening. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together.